The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Welcome to Beyond Just Talk. This is a positive, inspirational, and thought-provoking program that discusses life and business topics from a solution-oriented perspective with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, everyone. Welcome. It's another great day, and we're ready to discuss subjects that will make a difference in your day. This is the place that people connect, ideas are shared, and lives are enriched. My name is Stacey Young. My author's name is S.L. Young, but please call me Sly. Before we get started today, next week, my guest is an accountant, consultant, speaker, and author. This individual became an entrepreneur in 2005, transformed a part-time hobby owning her own business to become a local marketplace leader, and has spoken extensively about the impact of faith to help individuals survive the trials and tribulations of beginning a small business. For this week, we're going to recap last week's show, have a conversation with my in-studio guest, Kristen Cane, and preview next week's guest. Starting off with a recap from last week, we had Mr. Rashawn McDonald in, and Mr. McDonald is a Hollywood writing veteran and the architect who negotiated the deals behind the Steve Harvey brand. Mr. McDonald, during his visit with us last week, provided some sage advice about ways to maximize one's dreams and opportunities. So if you missed our conversation, you can listen to it on my website at slyoung.com/BJT-radio.html. Again, that's slyoung.com/BJT-radio.html. And if you'd like to connect with me on social media, you can go to my fan page for the show at facebook.com/beyondjusttalk. That's one word altogether, no spaces. Or my Twitter page at SLYoungVA. That's SLYOUNGVA. Or on my Google Plus page at google.com/plus SLYOUNGVA. First, I'm going to start to tell you about something that happened about 2 weeks ago. I went back to the jail to begin my nonprofits organization's latest class, Introduction to Business Overview. I had taken a break since last January. However, my guest today contacted me and asked if I wanted to teach another class, which I agreed. And so I'm glad that I went back. And while teaching at the jail, the moments that I really love the most are after an inmate in my program who might have an outward appearance that they're not interested, they don't want to be there, they don't care, and this is a waste of time. And then there's that moment, that I realized that that same inmate that was having those feelings a moment ago is actually paying attention. Or there's a smile or a head nod in agreement with something that I said. And it's in these moments that I smile and I think to myself, I got you. And so the reason that I teach in the jail is to give back. However, I never expected to teach at a jail. It wasn't until a few years ago when I wrote the first books in my inspirational life coach series that my family and friends who reviewed my work directed me to use my books to teach in the jail environment. It turns out that volunteering at the jail is one of the best things that I've ever done. I've had some individuals that are in my social group question their ability to teach in this type of environment while making comparisons to the work that I'm doing in the jail. And my usual response is, if I had an encounter with someone with questionable intent, would I rather meet the individual in a compromising situation or in a jail environment while trying to help the individual make positive changes? And I think a lot of times after processing my response, these individuals realize that their assessments are a little bit misguided. And, furthermore, we must remember that individuals who make a mistake at a moment in time shouldn't necessarily always be held back for their entire lifetime, because I'm sure there's a lot of us out there that have made a mistake that we look back on now and we say, you know what, I wish I had done something differently. But if somebody continues to hold us back, how are we ever supposed to get any better or do something different in the future? If you'd like to read about my experiences volunteering at the Arlington County Detention Facility during my first 9 months, you can read the articles on my blog on my website at slyoung.com or on the Huffington Post. The 3 articles that I'll direct you to are Beyond the Clothes. That was the first article that I wrote. Look into their eyes. They'll show you their hearts. And then the last one is Lessons Learned from 9 months voluntarily locked up. And then if you also want to read about why I'm so passionate about giving back, well, you can read my book, Above Expectations, My Story, An Unlikely Journey from Almost Failing High School to Becoming a College Professor, because it was that one individual, Miss Gwen Felders, that made all the difference in my life, that helped me begin the process even before I realized that I was trying to turn things around. So just to remind folks, if you'd like to join the conversation today, you can dial in at 1-800-450-7876. And so now I want to introduce my guest who's in studio here with me today. Kristen Cane is not only an excellent program manager at the Arlington County Sheriff's Department, she is also my nonprofit organization's hero. In 2012, after founding my nonprofit organization, Saving Our Communities at Risk Through Educational Services, I refer to as Socrates, there weren't any organizations that were interested in providing me with access to bring low-cost business, life, and soft-skill training to their communities. And then my goal with my nonprofit organization is to educate, inspire, uplift, and hopefully redirect individuals prior to them giving up on their educational pursuits or being arrested. The irony, and maybe the unfortunate reality too, is that the only individual or organization who wanted or welcomed Socrates' services were Mrs. Cane in the Arlington County Detention Facility. So now, without further ado, I welcome my nonprofit's hero, an individual whose work I admire, and a soldier in the fight to reduce recidivism rates. I welcome my in-studio guest today, Kristen Cane. Ms. Cane, welcome to Beyond Just Talk.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to say I'm very grateful for all you do in the jail. It's very helpful to us when we get people like you coming into the jail who want to do programs and want to work with our inmates. A lot of people have a lot of misconceptions. And I know when you came in, you were a little hesitant, unsure of what to expect. And that changed when you started in the jail, and so many inmates have commented or made mention of your class and how it affected them. And like you said, it can take one person and it could be a turning point. And for some of those inmates, you could be that person that turns their lives around.
Exactly. And it really was a life-changing experience. And on my first show, I think I described the experience that I had, because that day when we first met, you're like, oh, let's go upstairs. And we were talking, and you're like, hey, do you want to see a unit? And I was like, sure. And I thought we were just going to walk downstairs and look inside, not actually physically go inside. So when we got down there and you did your thing to get in the first door, and then I was like, okay, we're in between doors. That's cool. And then you did something else, and then we went in another door, and I went, oh. And that was the moment that it actually became real for me, because I was no longer that person looking in, wanting to assist. Now I'm inside of the unit. And for anyone who's never been inside of a jail, let me just tell you, I was surprised how much of the mental effect it had on me just seeing the guys in the uniform. These guys weren't different than anybody else that I would see out on the street, but walking into that environment and seeing them in those uniforms with the Arlington County Detention Facility on their backs, that sort of started to change me. But what was great for my experience was that I walked in, and I think it was like 10 seconds, if not that. It was like 3 to 5 steps, and I heard my name, and someone called my name, and I was like, no, they're not calling me. And then all of a sudden I heard my name again, and then I turned slowly and I looked, and this gentleman stood up. And when he stood up, and then he introduced himself, and he looked different to me. After it took me a moment to sort of realize who he was and where he was from, it was actually someone that I had ran with like 25, 30 years ago. And it was just incredible to run into somebody in that type of environment. And that was the moment that it reminded me of my own humanity, and that the fears that I had were a little bit misplaced and misguided. And the guys that are participate in the programs that I have, they want to learn, and they want to have opportunities too, but sometimes they just don't know how to make that first step forward. And so what we do with the programs that are offered at the Arlington County Detention Facility is we help folks to sort of figure things out and begin that process to turn around. So before we get really into the conversation today, I always like my audience to sort of know a little bit about the guests who come in studio with me or on my show. So who is Kristen Cane?
Well, let me start by saying, prior to working at the detention facility, I had been a social worker. I have a master's of science in social work and public policy, and I had been working primarily with children and families. And about 10 years ago, it hit me that I wanted to do law enforcement. I started with the detention facility as a deputy sheriff, but somehow got back into more of the social work when they had an opening for the program manager of the jail. Working in the facility, I realized that all those people, those families I had worked with as a social worker, the ones that lives didn't go the way they had hoped or had run into a lot of trouble, a lot of those same people were in the jail. And it was pretty much the same population having a different role as a deputy sheriff. And when I was offered the position of program manager, I kind of felt that tug to go back on the other side again and kind of have more of a social work role where I could help inmates and design programs and work with volunteers, work with case managers to try to help the inmates while they were in the inside, rehabilitate and get out better than they came in. A lot of people say, how could you work in a jail? I don't understand. They should be there for punishment. Here's the thing. Those people are getting out. Do you want them to get out better, or do you want them to get out the same or worse? They've made mistakes, and I'll be the first to say there are some people that are beyond rehabilitation that have done horrible things. For me personally, if you do something to a child, I'm kind of like, you deserve everything you get. I personally don't feel an urge to help you because children to me are, if you could do something horrible to a child, you deserve whatever you get. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, they've made mistakes. I was in college with people who I knew used drugs. I knew people who drank and drove when they shouldn't have. There are young people in the jail that made mistakes. There are older people who just never had anybody in their lives to support them. I know for you, you mentioned your mother pushed you and a teacher pushed you. There are some people who never had that. They've always been told, or it's been implied, that they were failures, that they were nothing. Their families did drugs. Their friends did drugs. They sell drugs, and that was just a way of life. They never learned anything different. And, literally, they are a captive audience, and sometimes we can truly change the way they think and give them skills, whether it's teaching them how to go on a job interview, teaching them how to apply professionally when they go in for that interview, getting them the GED, teaching them English. We have some people who come in here who've never learned English. You cannot get a job and do as well in this society if you can't speak English. And there are people that come into us and they're 19, 20, 21 years old and they've never really gone to formal school and they can't even speak the language. How can we expect them to do well when they come out?
Mm-hmm. And, I think one of the things that you had mentioned just a moment ago was about telling folks that they're a failure. And I know from personal experience that it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy because around my junior high school years, someone told me that I was guilty of doing something that I didn't do, and then I got a reputation, and they treated me like I wasn't going to be any better. So what did I do? I acted out the way that they expected me to. So we have to be very careful about the way that we have conversations with not only just the youngsters, like the folks that are coming up through high school, but also with anyone who is trying to make a positive change, because that one conversation that you're having with them today could be the difference between them turning the corner or continuing on that path and potentially doing something even worse than they're already doing today. So I would just tell anybody who's listening out there today, if you've ever thought about helping out in the jail or doing something just to give back, know that you as a single individual can make a difference. And so let me just, we'll start this a little bit, but we'll probably have to take a break in just a moment. But what led you to a career in criminal justice?
I just always felt like I wanted to help people, and particularly children and families. And one of the things that I always was aware of, that these people that get arrested and get involved with the law, they have families, they have children. I want to do whatever it is to make sure that we can support them.
All right, and right there we'll take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
Good morning. This WOL traffic update is brought to you by Unbound. Inbound 50 after 410 before 202 have roadwork scheduled in the two left lanes, so very slow now. Inbound 50 as you approach the district heading towards Cheverly with the roadwork. New York Avenue inbound still pretty slow from South Dakota Avenue to Bladensburg Road and southbound of the BW Parkway, slowing down to the accident near the district line. Mothers around the world have the power to lift their families out of poverty. They just need a little help. Make a difference in the life of a family today at unbound.org. Now, your WOL weather forecast brought to you by the Foundation for a Better Life. For today, partly cloudy, stray afternoon thunderstorm possible, a high near 88. Mostly clear overnight, down to 60 tomorrow. Mostly sunny, high near 77. Winston Churchill's words stirred his country in the face of defeat. Today, they inspire us to reach for our own victories. Commitment to pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, welcome back. Before we get started again, I want to tell you, if you're looking for a good cut, excellent service, and a family-friendly environment, then go to Mr. Morris Barbershop at 4807 Lee Highway in Arlington, Virginia. This family-owned business has been in the same location for over 50 years. I've personally been going there for almost 20 years because of the team of Jim and Clay make me feel right at home. So don't forget, for a good cut, visit Mr. Morris Barbershop at 4807 Lee Highway in Arlington, Virginia. Their phone number is 703-841-1488. Tell them Sly sent you. All right, so continuing on with our conversation. So before the break, you were telling us about your, what led you into your career in criminal justice.
Basically, as I was explaining, I just really felt a need to help people and to do whatever I could do to try to make people's situations better. And whether that meant locking up and providing safety and security in a detention facility as a deputy, or now helping inmates that are locked up to do programs, to do something productive while they're in jail. The Sheriff, Beth Arthur of the Arlington County Sheriff's Department, she believes very strongly that if you're an inmate and you're incarcerated, she wants to make sure you can do something so that when you get out, you can be a better person. And there are some inmates who do so many programs. They're in parenting, anger management, stress management, life skills, employability readiness. They really, you see it in them. They don't want to come out and repeat what they've been doing. We have an alcohol corrections treatment unit where inmates around the clock are working on their addictions. And these people work so hard to try to overcome what they've been through to come out of this jail a better person.
All right, great. So I think we have a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to Beyond Just Talk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I personally know Mrs. Cane very well, and I can definitely echo her sentiments and her a lot of what her mission is at the jail, because I am her husband, and she is a wonderful, caring person, and you have really brought out the best in her in terms of what she wants to do for the inmates there. And in terms of one of the things that she doesn't brag a lot, but one of the things that I thought was extremely powerful in what she brought was, a lot of times there's a lot of mothers incarcerated, and so they've had a mother's incarceration event. But she felt a few years ago that it would be important for fathers to have the same opportunity for their children once a year to come to the jail to spend time with their parents and their father. And so it's stuff like that really does make a difference. And, just having grown up myself in the Washington, D.C. area and done a lot of things with Martha's Table and Bread for Our City, there's a lot to do out there, and it really does make a difference. And so, again, I just wanted to really call in and tell you that it's something that she brings home every day, and that, again, everyone should get involved in something like this because it does make a huge difference to people. And you can just see that sort of impact that you have with them, even on a daily basis, but also long-term is really the goal.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because from the first time that I met Mrs. Cane, it was a light about her and what she was doing, because she brought me into it. She made me comfortable. She convinced me to continue to move forward. And then when I took a break, when I was busy doing some other things, she picked up the phone and called me and said, "Hey, come back. Let's do some more." And I said, how could I say no to you? So, I decided to come back. So I really appreciate you taking time to call in today. Anything else before I let you go?
No, that's it.
Thank you. And in regards to calling up him to come back, I waited the appropriate 2 months before I started pestering and said, "We need you, come back."
Hey, you know what? I'm always happy to help out at the jail, because it gives me a personal lift just being in that environment. So continuing on, after your degree program, you finished your degree. Was it what you thought it was going to be after you first got it started?
As a social worker, my first job, I was so naive. My first case, I was working with reunifying and working with families that were in preventive services. And I went to my first home visit, and the mother wasn't there. And a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old let me in the door. And I saw the house was a disaster. So what do? I start helping them pick up and clean.
Oh, wow.
So out of bounds and so inappropriate. But I was waiting for their mom, and the house was a mess. And I was like, oh, I'll stay with you guys, and we'll clean while I'm here. But, yeah, from there, it's a hard job anytime you work with people that, are addicted or have, abuse and neglect in their family and in their history. And as you know, it's a cycle that repeats. Many of the people in the jail, and this is where I have a lot of my empathy, I have taught parenting in the jail and done a women's book club in the jail because I don't want to just supervise programs. I need to know what's going on in the jail and work with inmates as well. You hear their stories, and a lot of them really had difficult lives. And the addiction and the stealing, they don't want to be doing it, but they didn't have the support. They didn't go to school. Nobody made sure they were there. We had parents that kept up on top of us. If you never had that, where are you going to go? Especially, we get people from the DC metro area. They just don't have as many people to support them and show them the right way. And better late than ever. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that we were talking about this past weekend on Sunday, actually, 2 days ago in the jail during our program, is that these guys do want to make a change, but the problem is sometimes they're held back, and it could be held back from their family members, from their friends, from policies that we have out in our community, the way that individuals out in the community view them as being someone who's previously been in jail. So that really holds them back as well. And one of the things that we started to talk about a little bit is this initiative, and I'm not going to talk about it much right now, but the initiative of Uncheck the Box, which is an important initiative for some of these guys that are trying to turn their lives around. Because if you have to fill out an application, and as part of filling out that application, you have to check a box to say that you've had a criminal record. Unfortunately, let's deal with reality. What happens is some folks will automatically take that application and push it to the side, not knowing anything else about your circumstances, situation, or how long ago it was. They automatically say, you're not worth me having a conversation with. So the great thing about this movement that's going across the country right now, Uncheck the Box, is that these individuals who want to do something different, who don't want to repeat this cycle that they've been in, they have an opportunity to do something different, get a job, become productive members of society, start making some money and saving it, getting apartments, and then hopefully they don't repeat. So we have to be very careful of the projections that we put out on folks. So let's back up a little bit because I want to know a little bit about your growth and your experiences at the jail. So when you started at the jail, tell me about your first position there and how did you evolve into your current position?
When I started as a deputy sheriff, I really didn't know what to expect. And at first, you're like, working in a jail, what's it going to be like? But in general, the inmates in the jail, as long as you are fair and consistent with everyone, most of them want to do what they have to do, and they're respectful and they're polite, and they're not a problem. You'll always have the people that, whether because of psychiatric issues or they're just, there are going to be bad apples in every bucket or bushel, but most of them just want to follow the rules and do what they need to do. I would observe them all day because our shifts are 12 and a half hours, and that's part of where I felt like, oh, I'm doing safety and security, but I would like to do more because I saw them go into programs. I saw how inmates would come back from GED, and they would just be kind of on a high, and when they passed their GED, you would see it that some of them, that was the first time they got a certificate or a diploma, and it meant something to them. I couldn't imagine being, a 30-year-old, and that's my first sense of accomplishment was this. At 30 years old, I'm so used to, getting accolades or going to college, going to high school, doing well. But for some people, that's a turning point. You receive this certificate. You've completed something. You've been successful at something. And the GED teacher is really good at promoting this isn't the end for you. You can go to college. You can do more. And this is the first time many of them have even thought about that. It never occurred to them, I can go past this. I could do this. It's, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to get into doing programs, because I saw how powerful it could be for inmates to do something and complete something and be successful, even under the worst circumstances of being incarcerated.
So you went from being a deputy sheriff to the program manager position. But one of the things that you were just telling us about, and I started smiling here in the studio as you were telling the story, is that it reminded me after one of my first, actually it was my first class that I taught in the jail. So we were at the time that we needed to put together the certificates, and sometimes the jail's on lockdown. It was a little bit of a issue with me getting in that day, but I still had a few moments. Since I was there, I waited. So I had a short period of time to run upstairs and give these guys their certificates for completing my course. So I went and gave the guys their certificates. And this one guy, just like you just described, said to me, "This is the first time I've ever graduated." And I'm sorry. I mean, it got to me. It got to me that somebody is saying to me, "This is the first time I've ever graduated." And he was really proud of completing this course. And then that was the moment that I said, you know what? I've got to do this more than just the 1 year. Because when I came in, you asked me to commit to 1 year. And come this October, it'll be 2 years. I've taken some breaks in between because it is taxing and time consuming to get up there and coordinate. But when I'm in that jail environment, there's nowhere else that I want to be because these guys do get it. And one of the things that you were talking about earlier was respect. And so I tell the guys from the first day that they're in my sessions that I'm going to look you in your eyes because I'm not going to see you as an inmate. You are a student as any other student in my classroom, and I will look you in the eye and I will treat you with the same level of respect that you provide to me. So if you pay attention, you don't disrespect me, you don't call me out of my name, we'll do fine. And they get it. And then once they start getting into the process of, because I don't do a lot of books in my class. I do a lot of Socratic method of teaching where we're just having a conversation and then it's a question and answer. And then those moments when they start to participate, those are the moments that I walk out of there and I say, man, I feel good, right? So, thanks for sharing us, your path into the work that you do. So let me ask you about some of the programs there. So you have the GED program that you described, and some of the other programs you sort of touched on quickly. So maybe you take a moment to expand on some of the other programs and just provide a little bit of details of, what they are.
Well, let me first say this. The Arlington County Sheriff's Department, we get so many people who want to volunteer or do things and they're not sure what. And if they can give us a program that we feel will help the inmates while the inmates are incarcerated, something like meditation, it keeps them calm, it helps them relieve stress, or something that will help the inmates when they get out, whether it's employability readiness, anger management, parenting. We're pretty much open to accepting a proposal, reviewing it, putting it up the chain of command, and considering it for the jail. We have over 50 different programs in the jail. We have quilting. We have yoga. We have impact of crime. We have English as a second language. Just so many things that inmates can benefit from while they're in the facility. You think about it, they're in the jail, they're not working. They have the option to have a workforce job, but pretty much their days are free. And they could focus on themselves and on making themselves better people. When do you have that? When you're on the outside. On the outside, you're trying to work, you're trying to take care of kids, family. Here's their time where if they focus, they can do it. They can, for the first time, maybe they've never taken anger management and they haven't known how to deal with their issues. We have therapists on staff. We have chaplain. We do all sorts of religious programming, whether it's religious mentoring, whether it's Bible study, religious worship. For some people, they need that to help them become better people because maybe religion is their route to becoming more mature and, more spiritual, and then they can be better people when they get out. But for the first time, for many of them, they can look inside and focus on them.
Okay, and right before we go to another break, does everybody receive a certificate if they complete a program?
Almost all programs receive certificates. There are a few that are exceptions, but most they do.
All right, folks, that's a great place to stop, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
News updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.
This report brought to you by Montgomery College. Convenient locations, small class sizes, transfer options, over 130 programs to choose from. Apply today for fall 2015 classes. montgomerycollege.edu/register. The U.S. Supreme Court has voted against the state of Maryland in an income tax case, ruling that the way the state taxes out-of-state income is unconstitutional. Tax lawyer Jeffrey Katz says certain parts of Maryland will fare worse than others.
I think the biggest losers will be places like Montgomery and Howard County, where you've got the greatest amount of income earners for the state.
Maryland officials have said an adverse ruling could mean the state might have to issue $200 million in refunds. Look for traffic delays in Annapolis because of commissioning week activities at the Naval Academy, including flights by the Blue Angels today and tomorrow. Thousands are expected on Friday for graduation day, adding to it expected heavy holiday traffic on Route 50 starting Thursday. Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe has signed legislation removing a restriction that food trucks could only do business on private property.
Every one of these trucks can go anywhere they want here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
The director of the DMV Food Truck Association, meanwhile, calls it a landmark event in the history of American street vending. Maryland State Police are investigating a murder on the Eastern Shore. The shooting death of a Salisbury man, 20-year-old James Skinner, has been ruled a homicide. Skinner's body was found early Sunday in the doorway of the home where he lived with a friend and her children. Governor Hogan still plans to add 100 state troopers to the force and reopen a state police barracks in Annapolis. Hogan proposed the moves in March, but the legislature failed to provide the money. Hogan says he'll pay for it by diverting $2 million that's been allocated for an arts center in Annapolis. This report brought to you by VacationExpress.com. 4 nights in Grand Bahama Island for $629, including nonstop air from Baltimore Hotel, all meals, drinks, plus taxes. Book today with VacationExpress.com. I'm John Lewis. When you're looking for news from Black America, go to News1.com.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, welcome back. But before we continue, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors. Do you want to capture cherished moments or your child's celebration or family occasion? Headshots that present the best image of you or your staff? Or a visual record of your corporate events? If so, contact the Stylish Shutter Portrait Studio located in the D.C. Metro at 571-455-5409. The owner, Ken Fife, is an excellent photographer with over 30 years of experience. The expression, "we focus on you," isn't just a slogan. It's a promise. So if you need a professional photographer, contact the Stylish Shutter Portrait Studio at 571-455-5409. All right, and we're continuing on WOL 1450 AM, and my guest in studio today is Kristen Cane, and we've been talking about working in a jail environment to help inmates to turn their lives around. And as continuing on with our conversation, so do you collaborate with any other jail systems? Or are there comparable programs? How does that work?
My staff and I have looked at other facilities. We actually have gone on tours to see what other facilities and jails are doing. So, for instance, our GED person, Miss Rede, has worked in the past with Alexandria to find out what they're doing. They also have conferences where jails and jail staff get together and find out what other people are doing, as well as collaborating with agencies throughout the Arlington area that work with our jail and in the jail. So we pretty much try to reach out to other jails, find out what they're doing, tour, talk to them. I have spoken to many of the other program managers in the area just to get feedback and input as well, to see where we compare and what we're doing, what we could be doing better, and things like that.
Is it generally pretty comparable, though?
It is. I think our jail does a lot. From the jails that I've spoken to and I've toured, we do, I don't want to say more, but we do at least comparable or more. We are very program focused, and also we have a lot of reentry initiatives, getting people ready to get out, because one of the biggest things is you walk out of a jail, then what? You know, where are you hooked up to? We have Offender Aid and Restoration, Friends of Guest House, other agencies in Nova Juniper that will we can refer people out to so that they already have appointments set up. They're ready to go and not just walk out of this, out onto the street with their bag full of clothes that they came up with and not know what to do. The same with the religious organizations that volunteer in the jail, with Alcoholics Anonymous members that volunteer in the jail. We always give them places to go after they get out that they can continue the services they are getting in the jail, whether that's GED, AA, whether they're getting treatment or help or counseling for sexually transmitted diseases. We don't want to just send you out and say, okay, bye, good luck. Right. So we do have a big reentry initiative where we can help them hook up with programs before they even get out of jail and get them ready to get out of jail. That even includes collaboration with Department, I want to say Employment Services, no, DMV, so that they can have an ID when they get out. Because there were times when inmates would get out of facilities, they don't have an ID. How are you going to do anything without an ID? so they can actually get an ID while they're in jail. Things like that to prepare them and get them ready and make sure we're not just sending you out after a year and wishing you luck.
Right, right. So one of the things I was thinking back to our earlier conversation, and you were talking about all these programs that are available, and you've got a lot of inmates that are participating in these programs, but what's the incentive for the inmates to participate? Because I could, go to jail and I could just sit around all day and not do anything. I play checkers, play cards, and say, you know what, I don't want to be productive. So are there incentives for the inmates?
Well, when you're in the facility, you either have to have a workforce job or you have to be in programs or you go to basic housing. Basic housing basically just means that, you're not going to be going to programs. You're not going to get all the free time. You've been in the jail, so you see it's a very open atmosphere. Inmates are out in the housing unit all day watching TV, using the phone, going to programs. We try to make it the least restrictive so that we can count on the inmates to behave and follow the rules. The old linear, bars and, cells where the, deputy walks by every couple of hours and people are just in cells. That's not how it is. It's a very open environment where the inmates have a lot of freedom in the unit and are expected to act responsibly and respectfully, no fighting, no making a mess, just be responsible adults, and then you can have a lot of privileges. Most inmates want to be in programs because what are you going to do for all day, every day? And we have so many that there's something most inmates have an interest in. Whether you can do yoga, we have quilting even, and they do some sort of program. Most of them do more than one. Many of them are in 3 or 4 programs because they do religious programs and then they do educational programs. And some of those programs are, if you're in GED, you're going every day. If you're in ESL, you're going 3-4 times a week. So you're really working on whatever you're interested in working on.
So are all the classes open to all inmates?
So the way the jail is structured, we have levels of inmates for safety and security reasons. Obviously, we're not going to put in a housing unit an inmate who's drunk in public or has, minor charge with somebody who has a major charge, which, would be like murder or rape or things like that. So programs are also separated by that way. So pretty much the low-level inmates go to the same programs, the higher-level inmates go to the same programs, and we program for both sets. We do have programs for all people, but obviously we have more programs for lower-level inmates because that's what we have more of.
Okay. And then you were describing that there seem to be 3 classifications of criteria for your inmates. There's the workforce, there's the program, and then there's the basic housing. So if maybe we could just break that down a little bit more. So if somebody is in the workforce, are they allowed to participate in programs as well?
Yes, they definitely can participate in programs. And inmates' workforce would be like working in the kitchen. So they would go a shift, a regular workday shift, and work in the kitchen, and they would earn a small stipend for that work. And they can also go to programs. They could do either or both, whatever they prefer.
Okay, and then so the programs they can do workforce also,
yep,
and then the basic housing they don't do.
Those are people who don't want to do anything, and they say, I don't want to do a program, I don't want to work.
Wow.
So we do have less basically free time activities for them.
Mm-hmm. So they're in their units more, in their individual units more?
They're in their unit, but the unit doesn't have TVs out. They don't, have as much freedom to spend time out because the unit is divided up by all the different levels. So you can only be out with your own level for recreation. Mm-hmm. It's hard to explain kind of over the radio. A chart would probably work best, but so it's a different kind of unit than the general population units.
Right. So if I come in and I say, you know what, I don't want to do anything and I'm in basic housing, is it easy for me to transfer to a program or a workforce unit?
Yeah, I mean, we have inmate service counselors. In addition to every unit having a deputy, there's somebody called an inmate service counselor that works in that unit. And obviously the deputy, his role is really safety and security first, whereas the inmate service counselor helps you get into programs. If you need a notary, if you need to contact your lawyer, if you have a personal issue, those are the type of people that handle those certain requests, and those are the people that will get you into programs.
Mm-hmm. And then, one of the other things that you mentioned a little while ago is about the open environment. And that actually was quite surprising to me because I don't think you ever explained to me before I went in there on my own. Because let me tell you something, the first time that I went in the jail, I knew that I was going into the jail. I was ready to go in the jail until the hour before I was ready to go into the jail. And then I knew that I was going to go walk in the jail by myself. And that was a different mindset for me. And getting through and getting cleared to go in, that wasn't the issue. But once I knew that I needed to walk into that unit for the first time, I won't say that I had fear, but I was apprehensive about what was going to happen, because you didn't just put me into a small program when I started. I went into a program in a program unit, which meant that I had 30 to 45 guys that were going to be looking at me from the moment that I walked in. And if I didn't have confidence when I walked in the door, I knew that I would be, eaten alive. And so when I went up to the floor that first day, it's like, okay, get yourself together, get in the right frame of mind, because you only have, it's we hear that expression that you only have one chance to make that first impression. That's important in life, but it's even more important when you're in the jail environment and you have folks that are going to be listening to you for an hour and a half or so. So I got through the first door and I said, stiffen up your back and your spine before you walk through this next door, because they're going to be watching you and evaluating you from the moment you open that door, because they're expecting you to be there. So they were already sitting in the common area, and I opened up the door and I walked in and I said, shoulders back, chest out, and walk straight ahead. And then I checked in with the guard to let them know that I was there. And once I exchanged the basic information, I took like an extra 10 to 15 seconds to take a deep breath. And I said to myself, I gave myself a little pep talk, and I said, you've got to turn and address these men like you own this. And this is your moment, and don't look back. And then I turned and I faced them and I said, I've got this, because I believe that, I don't know for sure, but I believe that if I would have come a little mousy or intimidated, they would have just eaten me alive. They would have been disrespectful. And let me tell you something. In the almost 2 years that I've been in the jail, there has seldom, maybe one or two times, there's been an incident where someone has actually been disruptive in one of my sessions. And I think of maybe like the 2 or 3 times that I can actually think about. One of them was somebody with mental health challenges. And so I just sort of dealt with it. The other one was someone that, and actually it was sort of interesting because he was making a point and he came at, we were discussing something and he came back at me, pretty sharply. And he said, why are you here? And I could have easily have gotten really defensive right there, because he had arms crossed, attitude on his face, like, why are you here? But I didn't react to what he was saying. And I thoughtfully answered his question, because he actually hadn't been in that environment before. He was new to the unit, didn't know about the program. And what happened was I explained to him very thoughtfully what we were doing, why I was doing it. And I answered all the questions for him that he would have wanted, or that I would have wanted answered for me. And then the surprising thing, and the thing that I was thankful of, is at the end of that, what he said to me was, thank you for explaining. He said, I didn't mean you any disrespect. However, I wanted you to know that I didn't know. But the other thing that was even more surprising, and I would have never have expected this while I was in the jail, is that the inmates who had been in my program for several weeks, 2 months, because this program I think was like 3 months at the time. I think about 2 months into the program, these guys started defending me. And that was a moment that I never, ever thought that I would be in a jail environment and I would have inmates standing up for me in that environment. So, life can change in an instant. So you can be somebody who's actually inside the jail and locked up, or you could be somebody who's going inside the jail and trying to help out. Because let me tell you, both experiences, no matter what end of the spectrum you're on, can be very life-changing. And I think one of the things that you said earlier is that you can either get bitter or better from the experience. And these guys have a lot of opportunity to make changes. So let's take a break right here, and we'll be back with you right after the break.
$14.50 WOL.
Good morning. This WOL traffic update is brought to you by Unbound on inbound Route 50. The roadwork that was right before the district line was cleared away. Southbound the BW Parkway still pretty slow. Approaching the district line where an accident was there for a while, now completely gone. Outer loop still slowing from about New Hampshire Avenue through Silver Spring and slightly beyond to 2 different work zones. A stationary work zone on the right lane. Mobile Road, we're heading toward Connecticut Avenue. Mothers around the world have the power to lift their families out of poverty. They just need a little help. Make a difference in the life of a family today at unbound.org. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by LifeLock for today. Partly cloudy, could see an afternoon thunderstorm, a high near 88, clearing overnight down to 60. Tomorrow mostly sunny, a high around 77. Your social security number is a key piece of info identity thieves use to impersonate you. Become a LifeLock member now. Use code TRUTH to save 10% at LifeLock.com. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Welcome back to Beyond Just Talk with your host, S.L. Young.
All right, folks, welcome back to WOL DC 1450 AM. You're listening to Beyond Just Talk with S.L. Young, and you'll have one more opportunity to call in if you like. Our number is 800-450-7876. And today I'm enjoying our conversation with our in-studio guest, my nonprofit's organizational hero, Miss Kristen Cane. So we've covered a lot of ground, but before you head out of here today, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to let folks know how might they get involved with volunteering at the Arlington County Detention Facility.
At the Arlington County Detention Facility, we work with a lot of agencies, but we also work with individuals. And you were explaining your experience coming into jail. You started a little bit different than everybody else because normally people start with agencies or organizations or groups, whether they're coming from inside on the inside, who does meditation in the jail, or AA, or offender aid and restoration, or they're starting as a tutor. So most people have the opportunity to shadow somebody a little bit, but since this was your program and your thing, and I felt confident you could handle it, we kind of threw you in there.
Yeah.
But most often you'll have a little bit of shadowing and a little bit more time to wet your feet before you get thrown in. But
I appreciated it, though, because it got it all over with.
Yeah, initiation by fire for you. But
Exactly.
For the rest of you, we let you tiptoe a little bit. So the way volunteers can come into the jail is if you work with a church or an agency or an organization that wants to get involved, they can apply through me. And there's an application process, obviously, because always the volunteer and the staff and the inmate safety and security is of utmost importance. We want to make sure everyone in the jail is safe, so there's a vetting process, clearly. And once you pass that vetting process, then I will call you and talk to you about what you wish to do in the jail and pretty much direct you. If it's going to be a religious program, you would talk with the chaplain and find out the details of that. If it's going to be you want to do a class, most likely I'll refer you to offender aid and restoration so that you can talk about the class, because they already have curriculums and programs designed. Most people don't come in and already have this whole plan and, books to base it on like you did. But you could say, I've been a teacher, I'm retired, I would like to help people prepare for the GED, and then I would refer you to our GED instructor, and she would help, make a match, whether you really want to tutor or help in the GED math program, and we match you up with whatever program you feel would be the best fit with you. We're very flexible about your time and about your schedule. We try to work around you. Programs are from 9 to 9 daily with some breaks for meals and lockdowns, but in general, we understand that this is something you're doing for us, so we try to make it as flexible and work around you. And then whatever your interest or your specialty is, we try to match you up with that. So, yeah, we're always looking for people to help us out. And it's, we get people, retired teachers. We get former law enforcement officers. We had a captain or a lieutenant from the police department in Arlington who was retired, and she wanted to come back and help in the jail. All walks of life. We work with Georgetown University. A whole staff of students comes into the jail and does tutoring. We get people from every field and every profession who are interested and have a skill that they want to, share with the inmates and that they think could help the inmates, whether they're in the jail or out of the jail. And we're just open to pretty much any idea or proposal.
Now, so if somebody was interested in volunteering, they might be a little bit concerned about safety. And I know that was one of the things that I thought about, and my family and friends asked me about as well, is how are you going to make sure that you're going to be safe while you're in that environment? So what would you say to folks that say, you know what, I'm concerned about my safety?
The main thing about the Arlington County Detention Facility, and I was so impressed even when I started there, because people are like, you're going to work in a jail. What's that going to be like? Is it safe? Everything is done with safety and security in mind. Nobody comes into the jail without being vetted, not even a guest, not for a tour. Everybody is checked. People are checked when they come in. It's very high tech, and they are on top of, we have people come from other countries touring our jail because we are so high tech and there's so much safety and security. And then we have you go through a full training from 9:30 in the morning until 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to go over everything with you to make sure you feel comfortable. And we are available if you start volunteering in the jail. And we always tell you, if you feel unsafe or you feel something is suspicious, tell us. You will always have somebody watching you via a deputy within, walking distance from you or on a camera. You're never isolated or left alone. You sign in everywhere. You're watched everywhere. So, I tell people, come in for a tour, come in as a guest, and you could see how it works, and then you can make a determination. I don't think we've ever had a person come in for a tour or as a guest that was scared away by it. Most people want to go through with it once they come in because they see everything that we have to offer.
Yeah, and the training that you provide there is quite extensive, and you cover a range of topics. I don't want to go into it right now, and then the other thing that you do is you not only have that initial training, you have an annual recertification process that all the volunteers must go through also, just to make sure that they don't get too comfortable, and just give them some reminders. And I think that's an important thing to do as well. So as we're starting to get close to the end of the show, there's a few more things that I wanted to touch base with you on. So are there other programs that aren't being offered now that you say, you know what, I would love to have this type of a program?
I think that we've always had a demand for computer classes. We find it hard to get computer instructors. That's something we're always looking for, because definitely inmates need to be comfortable around a computer. But with the options that we have, I feel like most areas are covered to some degree, but we could always use more of it. So just having, your intro to business, we could always use another intro to business, because as I said, we can only do certain levels of inmates in certain classes. So you're doing it to general population, which, as I said, is the lower level incarceration, but we could always use one for the higher level for the inmates that are and I've been trying to get you to do it. You're nodding, but I have tried to convince you to do that. So.
I'm still thinking about it.
So now that I've done this for you.
I'm still thinking about it.
But we always need doubles of classes since we have the different levels of inmates. So, one creative writing is never enough. We need two. We need two stress managements. But again, like I said, if a person comes in and they have an interest or skill, I'm more than happy to explore that with them. So. Okay,
that's great. And then let's talk about the computer classes a little bit, because you say that you have a need there. So what type of need do you have for the computer classes?
Well, we do keyboarding classes, but also we have inmates that just aren't very familiar with, Microsoft and Word and Excel and PowerPoint. And for a lot of jobs, people want to see people that are very comfortable around a computer and can do a spreadsheet or could, use PowerPoint and things like that. So just basic computer classes to teach them the basic computer software.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to do that, they can contact you. Is there a number or anything that they can reach you on, or how would they get in contact with you?
They can call me directly at 703-228-4291. That's my extension. And on the Arlington County website also is links to programs, and you can contact us that way, or you can email me at kcane@arlingtonva as in Virginia.us. So kcane@arlingtonva.us.
Okay, great. And then, so let's just talk about just programs in general. Are all the programs successful? And if so, why or why not?
Well, we have a lot of volunteers and a lot of programs. And one of the things we do is we try to talk to the inmates about how they feel about those programs so that we can get some feedback. A lot of our programs come in through offender aid and restoration. So they have a lot of their inmates fill out forms afterwards to tell them how they liked the program, and then they review that. And our volunteers are so, I don't know how to explain it, but the people we get to volunteer for us, they just have so much energy and are just so enthusiastic. I think it takes a certain type of person to work in a jail because they just know how to get people involved and to get people motivated. And I think that's one of the things that kind of self-selects, because the people that come into the jail, yourself included, just have a lot of enthusiasm. And that's really what makes the programs. Because if you teach a program and you have the enthusiasm and you are doing it for the right reasons, inmates will listen. But if you're just boring, monotone, I'm here just because, you're going to lose them. And
they know it.
And they know it. And they will let us know, and they will write a complaint or just not show up. I mean, the biggest sign for us if a program's not working is no one shows up for it. Yes, there are lockdowns and other reasons programs are canceled. But if you start with 20 inmates in your class and after 3 weeks you have 5, I know there's a problem. And I will go talk to those inmates and say, hey, what's going on? So...
Okay. And then, so let me just think about one other thing that, as you were talking through all of this, if I wanted to volunteer, what about the time commitment? So I might want to volunteer, but I might have a limited time commitment. Are you flexible in your scheduling?
We are. Most of our volunteers volunteer 1 hour a week. But like I said, if you come with an agency or group, like our AA volunteers, they alternate. So there's a team of 4 or 5, and they do 4 meetings a month, and each individual volunteer does 1 meeting a month, and they work it out so that, they can do it once a month. And we're very flexible with that kind of thing.
And so I think I'm going to probably leave it right there, but I want to let you know that I really appreciate you coming in today and talking about these things that are happening in the jail, because I know that I didn't have an awareness of any of this information. It's very difficult to find out unless you know somebody who's actually participating in these types of programs. So I'm hoping that the information that we've shared today will encourage folks to say, you know what? I can volunteer. After hearing the both of you talk about this today, it's not that big of a deal to go in and help these guys out in the jail or ladies.
Right.
Because they are looking for an opportunity to get a hand up. So we don't necessarily have to give them a handout, as I've said previously before, but these folks are definitely looking to have a hand up. So, Ms. Kristen Cane, thank you so much for coming in and being in studio with me today. I really appreciated the conversation and the information that you shared. It was very topical, and I hope that more folks will reach out to help you. So in closing, let me just tell you that I hope that you enjoyed today's show. On next week's show, my guest will be Marquita Miller, an entrepreneur with a firm foundation of faith, which led her to write a how-to guide about ways to merge faith and financial freedom. Remember, your candle is fueled from within, so don't let anyone reduce or block the fuel to maximize its brightness. Enjoy the rest of your week. Until next time, my friends, have a good one.
WOL